I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanakeims.
All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
See, now I feel like I'm supposed to pause because usually there was a pause, but now that we have good equipment, we don't have to pause. Anyway, what's going on, everyone? I'm Mike Kadlick. He's Taylor Kyles here. We're here for CLNS Media, back with another episode of the Patriots Daily Podcast, powered by PrizePicks, powered by GameTime. From them later. But after Taylor figures out his shit over there, stops knocking stuff.
I'm okay.
We're going to use today's episode as a mailbag, a typical Wednesday mailbag, as a way to get in some preview into some look at this Colts game. We'll talk about the offensive line. We'll talk about some things moving on to the future with, the draft and free agency and things like that. So we took all your questions from Twitter, put them into here, and we're going to answer as many as possible. You can throw some in the chat as well. So we'll try and get to as many as we can over the course of the episode. We're going to start, though, with the injury report. Patriots just sent that out a little while ago. Actually, this is a random one, Taylor, but before we get to the actual injury report, did you see Adam Schefter's report like a little while ago? Not about the Patriots, kind of about the Patriots, about Fred Warner.
No.
Fred Warner has been playing this entire season with a fractured foot, and he did it in the Patriots game. And he's been playing all season long with it was either his foot or his ankle. I want to double check now that I have it. But
either way, like after what we saw from Kyle Duggar last week or the past 2 weeks, maybe we already knew that Fred Warner was built different. That's ridiculous.
Fractured ankle. He's been shooting it up with meds and whatever else they use. And yeah, he's been playing for months now with
that. Whatever else they use is carrying a lot of water.
Yeah, that is.
This is that kind of show.
Yeah, that is insane. But let's move on. We'll move it back to the Patriots here. Their injury report just comes out. Nobody missed practice, which was good. Everyone was there, and everyone actually participated. Now we have a lot of limited players. Christian Barmore was there, but still limited with the blood clots. Pop Douglas pops up with an ankle injury. The rest was pretty standard. A lot of defenders on here. Kyle Duggar, Aquale, Christian Ellis, Anthony Jennings. Peppers is back on the report now that he is an active player with a knee injury still. Jaquelin Roy, who you spoke to in the locker room today, told you he was going to be back at practice. That was, in fact, true. He was limited. Cole Strange, Sione Takitaki, Keon White, Dietrich Wise. Full participants include Christian Gonzalez and Marte Mapu. So
Jaquelin Roy was like one of my first reports.
There you go. Let's go. Yeah. In the reporting game is Taylor Kyles now. But I guess this is like good news and bad news all wrapped into one, because on one hand, nobody missed practice. Everybody who's supposed to be there was there and looks like they can at least potentially be available on Sunday. But on the flip side, a lot of limited guys. And Pop Douglas, a guy who they're trying to get integrated more, same page as Drake May, things like that, which we'll talk about, pops up with an ankle injury. So your overall thoughts outside of that from what we got on Wednesday?
I feel like this is, I've only been on the beat for 2 years, but it's the second year in a row. I feel like we're like, oh, this CVS receipt of injuries, but we're talking about football and November is almost over. 'Tis the season. Like, people are going to be hurt. They're going to have to be playing hurt and have to tough it out. And, this is where you kind of see, all right, who's invested, who really is able to at least get on the field. And Gerard Mayo said, if you're on the field, you're healthy enough to play. Jaquelin Roy was one I was really excited about, because I feel like now that you have him and he can play that nose tackle spot where, you kind of been mixing other guys, but Devon Godchau's had to be in the middle more than he was when Roy was healthy. Roy played really well for them. Now I think if you want one of those really big fronts, which is going to be big, obviously, against Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson, having Roy in the middle with Godchaw and Barmore next to him at times, obviously Barmore and Aquale are going to rotate in. I really like that grouping. I think that's going to be a really tough group to run on. I think that's really cool. Demario Douglas popping up obviously isn't great. This is, I believe, the first time he's been on the injury report this season. Christian Gonzalez, full participant after the hip injury, which looked like it might have affected him on like 1 or 2 plays, maybe, but obviously played really well in that game anyway. Marte Mapu, full participation. I think he was full participant last week with the neck as well, wasn't he?
I think so, yeah. He's been listed there. It seems like he's probably working through something, but again, it's not much to worry, I don't think, because again, he's been practicing the whole time.
Yeah, and I know that people were questioning how Jabril Peppers was hurt when he hasn't really been playing. He did tell us today during media availability that he got banged up in the 49ers game and has been really spending his time away from the team to try to listen to his body and work back from that. So he's dealing with the knee injury. Cole Strange, limited with the knee injury. Obviously, Michael Jordan was released yesterday. We spoke to Layden Robinson. He told me directly that, he's been working at left guard for a minute. He's gotten repetition in, and that's helped. Mike and Wenu told me that he's spoken to Layden about playing at left guard, and obviously as someone else who's been playing multiple positions. And again, just comes down to repetition. So Cole Strange, probably if he comes back, still eyeing that center spot, as long as Layden obviously plays well at left guard. But those are really the big ones. The rest we pretty much knew about. Dietrich Wise still limited with the foot. He did not play. Was he active last week?
I don't believe so. I think he was out.
Yeah, I think you're right. Again, these weeks blend together, so I'm sorry.
Really do. Now I'm second guessing myself if he even played last week.
I don't think because I remember when the inactives came out, we were like, oh, okay, Yannick is just going to play. Or Yannick.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
And he did. I was just wondering if he was active and didn't play. He didn't play. I knew that for sure. But yeah, Equality's been dealing with the elbow for a while. Ellis the knee for a while. So no really other surprises there. But yeah, again, the bigger ones are Pop Douglas, Jabril Peppers. Yes, he's hurt even in his return. Not 100% sure that he's going to play, but we'll see. And Gonzo healthy and Jaquelin Roy healthier. So, those are good to see.
Yes, sir. All right. You mentioned Cole Strange in that little in that mix there. So let's get right into the mailbag. And I want to start with one here that, oops, I just took off the wrong thing. That now we're looking at a blank screen. There we go. I wanted to take, where the heck are you? This off so we can pop up your questions. All right. Offensive line. Michael Jordan, you mentioned Michael Jordan and Cole Strange in the injury portion there. Michael Jordan, obviously not the best game for him. You had written about it on CLNSmedia.com. He would be someone who has the potential to be benched this week after Gerard Mayo said that would be the case, that they would be tinkering with their starting lineup. Turns out they flat out released him. They said, you're not good enough to even be a depth piece right now, Michael Jordan. So I know it's
one of my guys, one of my hogs.
He is one of the guys, but it does come down to a business, as we know. So he is gone. They claim what was his name? The guy from the Dolphins?
Oh, Lester Cotton.
Cotton. Okay. Lester Cotton. He comes in from Miami. Michael Jordan is gone. So they add some depth there while still now having a spot open on the offensive line. So this question, what's the prediction? David Jacobs' guess is Lowe, Robinson, Strange already this week, Onwenu, and So 3 changes according to David Jacobs. What do you think they go forward with this week? Do you think Cole Strange is able to come back? Do you think Trey Jacobs ends up back on the right side, or do you think they're going to bench him for City So again as well?
I think after how Jacobs performed, I'd be very surprised if he plays this week. We've talked about it. He's been working his tail off. He's been overmatched a lot. He's been going against some of the best rushers in football more often than not. Chop Robinson has really just skyrocketed over the last month. And unfortunately, Jacobs is on the receiving end of that butt kicking. Unless he has a great week of practice or something, or City So struggles, I think City probably still there. Now, that said, we spoke to Alex Van Pelt, and I've mentioned people always wonder, why hasn't City been playing more? And the coaches have told us he's a relatively inexperienced player. He's played a lot of football technically, but you're talking about a much higher level than when he was playing in high school in Canada and then obviously playing at Eastern Michigan. You saw a couple of times where he's trying to play his technique, right? The independent hand use that we talk about in Scott Peters' system. So important because you shoot 2 hands, you're basically begging someone to just knock you off balance. And you saw him shoot 1 hand, and then Chop Robinson was like, yeah, I'm just going to wait until you shoot it, and then I'm just going to make you look silly. And he missed really badly twice. And Alex Van Pelt mentioned, City would tell you himself it's about consistency. So I feel like we've been on the right track where with him, the strike system, I think it's easier for veterans to pick up on because for them, it simplifies things. Yeah. Whereas for young players, when you're already so raw and you're being told, this whole system, it can be overwhelming, especially it's one thing if you like it in concept and you understand it. It's another thing to translate it to the field because while it's more difficult, it also helps you in the long term where it's like being a receiver under Brady. Yeah, he's going to ask you to run a certain type of route at a certain depth. And even sometimes he's going to ask you to adjust on the fly. But it's going to help long term because the offense functions at a higher level.
Right.
So, So I still think he's going to be there, but I want people to be cautious. Like, just don't expect him to just be lights out. He's going to be up and down. Yes, of course, Mike and Wendy at right guard. I think Ben Brown is probably going to stay at center, honestly, unless he has a really tough game. And then that opens the door for Cole, because I think Cole, he's not played in a really long time. Even if he's back in the lineup, similar to So, people need to understand that it's not going to be perfect. It might not even be pretty. You just obviously want to know what you have in him at that position at some point. So it'll be curious. But, Ben Brown hasn't been that bad that you have to rush Cole Strange back. Layden, from every indication we've got, he is going to be at left guard. Mike Reese reported yesterday that he'd been participating there. So we all kind of spoke about it more openly today, because I didn't even know that he was on the radar to play, to be honest, because he'd been benched. And obviously, Gerard Mayo hinted that they wanted to see what they had in those guys. So he's going to get another opportunity. And then Vidarian Lowe, Mayo's point of, there's some guys that get benched, but if you don't have depth, there's not a whole lot you can do.
There's no one else that they could play at left tackle
other than Demontre Jacobs, who got benched. So I think that the prediction is right outside of Cole Strange. I just don't think he's quite ready yet. And Ben Brown hasn't been a total dumpster fire, although obviously replacement level starter.
No, I think so too. I think you're right on that, and they are right on that. Outside of the Ben Brown Cole Strange thing, I think it's still probably another week for Strange. They obviously opened his practice window, so he does have to be activated within that 21 days. But I think they'll probably give him another week. Like you said, it hasn't been as egregious from that position as some of the other ones. And I do wonder if they give Trey Jacobs another chance this week. I know he wasn't great. A lot of it was pre-snap, though, too. The penalties. Obviously, he had his struggles, in play, but they've kind of leaned on him, just like they've leaned on Vidarian Lowe a little bit this year to kind of step up and play well with their backs against the wall. And they've answered the bell in those situations. Now, last week wasn't great, but they made their change. They're going to make their change. Michael Jordan's out. Layden Robinson's in. I think maybe they keep the bookends together one more week. And if it goes poorly again, then they go to City mid-game like they did last week. You look like you don't agree, or you have another point.
I will just emphasize. I just emphasize the point that Mayo made, that they want to see what they have on the roster. Demontre Jacobs is a free agent after this year. Everybody else in this question is someone who's going to be under contract next year. So that's why, I'm rooting for Trey.
Right.
Trey is a great guy. And like I said, he worked his tail off. Like, I can't say enough good things about him as a person. But as a player, he has struggled. He's been overmatched. I'm just not sure he's the level of athlete you need at that position. And, you don't know if he's even going to be on the team next year. Also, just for the comment section, Discord's been fine mostly, but avoid the R word. This is not an R word friendly chat. So just a fair warning. If you use it again, we're going to have to, put you in timeout for a little bit. Just letting that be known.
Let it be known. Okay. You mentioned with the strike system and for younger guys to be able to pick stuff up. You mentioned Tom Brady. You mentioned route spacing. You mentioned kind of playing, free football right there. So let's get into the saga that is the Blitz right now, because May, Pop, not on the same page last week. We didn't know if there was hot route adjustments tagged onto those blitzes, if you're supposed to just turn your face and look for a football in a pocket, if you're supposed to run through and there's another hot route attached to it that has nothing to do with where the blitz is coming from. A lot of questions, not a ton of answers this week so far. Drake May takes blame. Pop Douglas says he was just running his route. But then AVP today says they do sort of have this implemented into their system. So the question is, sometimes it feels like the offense has not implemented these. Is this just a feeling, or is it a real thing? To me, it's been a real thing, and we've seen it firsthand. So, but they do have it, apparently. They're just not on the same page. So I guess I'll ask you the same question, Taylor. I know it sounds like they have these in their offense. They're just not putting it out there on the field and not executing it correctly. So where do they go from here? Like, what do you think's been this issue, and how do they improve themselves against the blitz?
So I want to start by making a quick differentiation. It's something that kind of people say interchangeably, understandably, so just going to clear it up. Hot routes and side adjustments are two different things. A hot route is when you see that you don't have enough people to protect based on whatever scheme you're in. Like if you have 5 and they bring a 6th guy, then you say, okay, I know there's a shorter route on one side of the field. That's where I'm going to go so I can get the ball out quickly. A side adjustment is different. A side adjustment is what we were thinking maybe Demario Douglas could have done, which Brian Hoyer clarified on a slant. There is no hot adjustment on that, at least, in the systems that he's been in, where if you are running a certain route and you see a player in front of you blitzing, then instead of finishing the route, you basically will turn a hitch so you can be as available as quickly as possible. Because again, you don't have enough people in protection to make up for it. Now, in the Patriots offense, what I've seen mostly is they just want to get everything blocked up because they'll keep Ramondre Stevenson in to block pretty often. Very rarely is a defense going to bring 7 players. Like that's usually a cover 0 or something, or they'll try to be tricky and overload one side because if you're blitzing 7, that leaves 4 in protection. More often than not, unless, again, it's cover 0, you're putting yourself in a bad spot. And even as we see for the Patriots defense, cover 0 can also be a very risky call. So Alex Van Pelt told us they have all these things in the playbook. It's more a matter of with Demario Douglas specifically, because that's where it really showed. Like Kendrick Bourne said he didn't run his route at the right depth, which is its own problem. And it's very confusing. And we all love Kendrick Bourne, the person, but some of his answers, especially considering they've kind of been his answers multiple times, are so confusing. Or I get that you've not been on the field and, you're working with different quarterbacks. It's a different offense. It's not, it's kind of apples to oranges. But I'm still just confused as to why a veteran is making these kinds of mistakes so often. But, that's kind of its own thing. Alex Van Pelt did say that Demario Douglas, he's a young player. He's going to learn from this, and we're going to continue to grow and figure this out. Now, for me, I would say that Demario Douglas is excellent in one-on-one situations where it's simple and it's, hey, beat this guy across from you. He does that like 80% of the time. Very, very good in man-to-man coverage. We've seen since last year, not the best feel for zone. Like last year, sometimes the routes themselves were wrong. He's gotten much better, I think, at doing that for the most part. Obviously, there's inconsistencies that have popped up recently, but you saw it last year, and now you're seeing it again as defenses are playing more zone against Drake May, and he's seeing more targets with Drake May. He doesn't always have the best feel for space, where, the slant is one thing. Alex said that he was supposed to run at a certain depth. He ran and got excited and ran it at the wrong depth. I think it was supposed to be a 5-step slant. He ran it in 3. That threw off the chemistry, even though it still kind of seemed funky. I don't know. I'm so sick of talking about it. We have the answers. That's what they were. But then you have other plays like the one over the middle, the one-handed catch. Right. Where that's a very, very blatant example of he did not feel that out well because Drake was going to throw to him when he was between 2 defenders, but Demario kept running and almost ran himself into coverage, which is why Drake threw it behind him. Obviously, Pop makes an amazing adjustment to catch the ball, breaks the tackle, runs, one of the coolest plays of his career, but it was another example of him not really having a great feel for when to just sit down and settle. And not all young receivers have that. This is a kid who came from Liberty, and you don't really know how often he was put in positions to do that. So he's still young, still time to grow. This entire receiving core is young. But you also saw times like Jalen Polk, where I'm not sure if it was necessarily a side adjust, but he pointed out on one play where it wasn't blocked up correctly that a slot over him was about to blitz. He points to him and tries to tell Drake. Once he comes, you could see he ran his route, but he showed the urgency to get his head around as quickly as he could. Even before he started to break, you could see he started. That was one of my favorite clips from Jalen Polk all season. I'm like, yes, like you got it. I can see it.
Right, you got it.
There. Got to be more consistent, but those are the kind of things where sometimes in Polk, where he's at a much in a program like Washington, where now their coordinator is in the NFL. And, obviously Tyler Hughes is a coach as well, but that wasn't his coach. So, the pedigree plays into it as well, but they are young. They'll learn. It's why when you see Drake scramble, who's gotten most of the catches? It's been Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, and Kendrick Bourne, guys who have a little more experience and more feel for when to settle into those zones. So, I kind of went off on a long tangent, but it's an interesting conversation, and it's one that's more nuanced than I think, they're not prepared. Because you can go on my timeline. I broke it down. We'll break it down again on Friday. We get into our deep dive and our deep game preview. But the issues, especially against the Blitz, weren't, oh my God, they have no idea what's coming. It's Drake's holding onto the ball. Antonio Gibson, I asked him today about a play where I thought he may have had a dual read, which is basically when you scan and see, okay, is this linebacker blitzing? No. Is this slot corner blitzing? No. Now I go out into my route. Yeah. He admitted it was bad eye discipline where he looked at the linebacker and then went into the route, which left that guy unblocked and didn't give Drake enough time to throw. And that's what a lot of the time it is in the system is they'll keep 6 in, and they do, honestly, I will give them the credit. They do an excellent job identifying blitzers for the most part. Like when Miami sent creepers at them, which is when you rush 4, but one of the rushers is an off-ball player that you're not expecting. Vidarian saw it coming every single time. That was not an issue. It was more like DeMontre Jacobs takes the guy outside instead of inside, where it gave him a shorter path to the quarterback. And the Gibson thing, or, again, Drake not letting the ball go. So there's things they need to do better. We always talk about the preparation. The coaches have not made it seem like it's a preparation issue, nor have the players. The players are constantly like, yeah, no, we know what to do. We need to get it done. And that's ultimately what it comes down to.
It's a personnel issue. That's what it's continuing to look like. Like you said, it's sounding like these players are being put in the right position. David Andrews talked about it yesterday. There's been this whole thing around coaches not having them prepared, and the white lines comment from Gerard Mayo. It's like, look, if a guy blitzes and Pop Douglas is supposed to replace him, but he doesn't, that's not on coaching. Like, unless the coaches haven't, drilled it into them as much as they should. But, Pop getting excited and running a 3-step slant instead of a 5-step slant. Now, granted, if he ran a 5-step slant and still hadn't turned his head in time when Drake was trying to throw off the blitz, then that's an issue in itself of where it's like, maybe just turn around. But there is nuance to it. You're totally right. It's not that simple. There's been a lot of different answers. It seems like we finally do have our answer today, and it's just something that they're going to have to feel out and get used to and grow together as a quarterback and receiver as they continue on.
And last thing, because I know we gotta pay the bills, but I will say, and I was talking to Mike Reese about this, Alex Van Pelt has been, for the most part, excellent in his press conferences. I know people have some issues with what he said. He is so transparent in a way where, like, Bill O'Brien last year tried to be, but he was still under Bill, so there were things he literally would tell us, like, I can't tell you all this, but, I'll give you as much as I can. Van Pelt does a great job of giving us answers and helping us do our job more effectively without, like, giving away the whole, like, house secrets. Like, never I heard him give an answer where I'm just like, oh, like, we're Mayo. We'll do that sometimes where it's like, you shouldn't have told us
that. Yeah.
I like it, but you shouldn't have said that. Alex Van Pelt has done a really great job of being transparent, and you can see why players like him. Like, he's no nonsense. He gives it to you straight. The first time I spoke with him was at the Combine. Like, the day he got there, we actually were at the same place. Got to speak to him and Scott Peters, and I was like, oh, I like this guy.
Yeah.
Like, everything they say about him being a culture guy, like, you can see because of the way he talks to people. Very respectful, very honest. And even when the penalties, he was like, that was horse crap. And he kind of dug into his team and was like, I kept telling the guys, and I showed them, you had a bad week of practice. You were committing penalties in practice. And good or bad, those things translate to the game. So I wanted to give him his shout out there because, as a journalist, a lot of the time coaches understandably don't like to give us, the keys to the answers, the exact answer. But, Van Pelt's been as transparent as I think you can be in his position. That's been very cool.
For sure. All right, let's pay those bills like you mentioned, then we'll get to the rest of the mailbag. Let's talk about PrizePicks first and foremost, because PrizePicks is the best place to get your real money. Sports action in with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. They have flex play, which means you can still cash out of your lineup even if it isn't perfect, doubling your money even if one of your picks does not hit. They put their members first as well with withdrawals. They're fast, they're safe, they're secure, and when your picks hit, you get your money in as little as 15 minutes. You can also cash out with Venmo to make it even easier to get your money. Taco Tuesdays. What's the other one? Something Fridays. I can't find it here in the read, but they do have Taco Tuesdays. Yeah, Flex Friday. Oh, it's right in front of me. See, Flex Friday. They discount select player projections up to 25%. We do have some Thanksgiving PrizePicks lineup coming out all over the CLNS channels as well as my Twitter on tomorrow for Thanksgiving. 3 games. We have Packers, Dolphins. We have Giants, Cowboys, and we have the early game, which is Bears and Lions. We will have lineups for all 3. So come play along with me or fade me. Do whatever you wish, but we will have some lineups out there. So if you want to join in on the fun, download the app today and use code CLNS. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, let's continue on with this mailbag. We answered the hot routes. Let's go 30,000 foot bigger picture, free agency. Because
my daughters were fighting.
That's okay.
I heard.
Anyway,
sorry, just being a dad.
No, Taylor being a cat dad. How aggressive should the Patriots be in free agency? Russell says, be patient, draft well. You've disagreed with this over the last couple of days with this whole draft and develop thing. I know you asked Alex Van Pelt about it today. In our conversation, it seems like you want them to hit the veterans, the free agents, more than focusing so much on this draft and develop mantra that Elliot Wolf has kind of poured out here.
Yeah, so one, I'm going to address this real quick because I hear this all the time. Ladd McConkey is a pure slot receiver. He can play like some Z, whatever, but like Demario Douglas was seen as a building block for this team. Ladd McConkey would have been redundant. Jalen Pope can play all three positions to a degree. Obviously, he's not playing to his caliber, but if he hits the ceiling that we thought he had as when he was in college, he fits in this offense in terms of like complementing the other guys much better than Ladd McConkey would. Although, obviously, Ladd has been excellent. No one was arguing that he was a bad player. I tried to talk myself into Ladd McConkey. I think you remember that. Yeah. I liked him. I tried to find ways to get him. And I was just like, I think it's redundant. I think it's a bad allocation of resources. I understand it, but
670 yards and Polk has 87. Like,
I'm not. They're rookies.
You're not.
They're rookies. Like, I'm just saying again. Like, if they drafted like a tight end in the first round, it's like but Hunter Henry's still here and he's a good player for you. Are you using your resources well? I understand the position, but they play different roles. But again, I get it. Not dumping on the comment. Just my 2 cents. So when it comes to the aggressiveness of free agency, I think obviously you want to draft well and you want these young guys to develop. Alex Van Pelt said he thinks these guys have bright futures. They're developable. I don't know if that's a word for sure, but that's what he told us. I don't want to condemn these guys necessarily because we've seen Demario Douglas make improvements. We've seen Kayshon Boutte go from a guy they admitted they didn't really see as a starter or somebody who's going to have a significant role. Now he's the only receiver who's on the field for almost every single play. Now, obviously, his production hasn't been great lately, but I think also that comes with the growing pains of new offense, new quarterback, guys get more film on you, et cetera, et cetera. Like I told you, like the Dolphins had a lot of coverages where guys would drop when he was the backside receiver into the void that he was trying to run into. But I do need more adults in some of the rooms. That's my biggest thing. Where offensive line, you need as many veterans with proven track records as you can get. Because I think Scott Peters is a very good coach, but I think he maybe demands a lot of young players, right? Which it's one thing if you're able to grow behind the scenes, right? Like Layden even said, it was helpful for him to get benched when he got, got tossed around by Jeffrey Simmons. That's a really tough spot to put a rookie in, and it's not really fair to ask. Yeah, you want to draft and develop, and you want the young guys to play, but you can't throw them into the fire when they're not prepared, right?
Right.
So that's the thing for me. The Patriots, obviously, Caden Wallace missed a lot of this season, so that's really hurt his development. Layden Robinson, we'll see what happens with him. But like even Vidarian, I think he's a really, really good spot starter. I don't think he's someone who can start for you because the penalties for one, and also he's not a very good run blocker. And even as a pass protector, that's where he's been at his best. He's been solid, right? He hasn't been great. And you need to make sure you are investing in Drake May and Ramondre Stevenson because you paid a running back, right? If you're going to pay a running back the money that Ramondre got, you need to give him an offensive line, and he has been getting hammered in the backfield for most of the year. So you can draft, like, if it's Will Banks, or Will Campbell, that's a little different, right? Because that's a high pick who has the talent and the mental ability, you would think, to contribute early. Like Drake May, where, Alex Van Pelt.
If they're going that early, they should be able to translate pretty much instantly.
Exactly. But we're talking about, like, when you get past that, sometimes it takes those guys a little while. So I would love if Vidarian is your stopgap and you draft, Will Campbell early. I'm cool with that. But at left guard and right tackle, I need guys with NFL experience, whether it's Morgan Moses, who's been a great pass blocker this season, even though he's getting up there in age, just to kind of give you stability at right tackle and insurance for Caden Wallace. I like that. Patrick McCarry maybe at left guard if Layden Robinson doesn't show you he's really that guy. Even Trey Smith, to be honest. Like, I'm a big fan of Layden. If he doesn't show you enough by the end of this season, he was a 4th-round pick. If you can get Trey Smith and pair him with Mike Nwenu, you do that. And you have the money, right? If Drake May and the team finish on a high note where people are going to take the money and the wads of cash you're trying to throw at them, then yes, you need to be aggressive. Get your number 1 wide receiver or, at least a top wide receiver. Again, a veteran and an adult in the room because Kendrick Bourne has been the veteran, but he doesn't have the on-field production or the track record in the NFL, or frankly, the temperament, I think, to be the kind of guy that commands the room. I think he's great complimentary, where he's got the energy, and, if he's one of those guys and can kind of be a source of, just lightness a little bit, that's awesome. But he can't be the guy that you look to when you need to make a play necessarily. He hasn't shown it in this offense yet or in the past couple of years. I think he has that potential, but like as a personality wise, I just need that dude, right? Who really gets everybody to lock in and also can go out for you and have a monster game week in and week out and dictate coverage, do all those things, whether that's through trade or free agency. And then on defense, I think I think cornerback and edge rusher, if you can get some legitimately good guys, that's awesome. I don't know if those guys are going to be on the market. That may be where you have to kind of go to the draft, but I think the defense is pretty much set. You need the defense to get healthy and get some reinforcements, but on the offense, get adults in the offensive line room and the wide receiver room like you have with the tight ends, like you have with the running backs, and let's just get some stability. So when you talk about these guys going out and executing, well, yeah, when guys are overmatched every week and when they've never started a full NFL season before, that's asking quite a bit. So just get guys that you at least know what you're getting out of them is my big thing. So aggressive in that sense, yes. And aggressive in like spend the money. Don't hold on to it. It's money. Don't grossly overpay. But if it's like $1 million whatever dollar difference, like, yeah, go and try to get your guy if you really believe in them. And then, of course, you also want to draft well. That's just philosophical.
Totally. And on the adult in the room thing too, it goes into what we were just saying earlier about Kendrick Bourne and how he was like, yeah, you know, I've made mistakes. I ran the wrong route. It's okay. Mistakes happen. And it's like, you need someone more than that in the room to be like, no, dude, mistakes can't happen. We have to strive to perfection. I'm going back to the David Andrews podcast again the other day where the offensive line pre-snap and post-snap with some holds, it was pitiful. Like it can't happen. It's the reason they were starting drives from behind pretty much all day long against Miami. David Andrews has been out. They haven't had that guy in the room since he's been out. And you're seeing what happens when there isn't somebody there. And same with wide receiver where Pop's not on the same page because a guy is not above him in the room to say, no, you have to do this and here's why and here's how it plays out. And yes, coaching is one thing, but players coaching and helping each other and setting an example in practice, in games is a whole nother thing. And that's how you're going to elevate the rest of your room. That's how players like Tom Brady elevate everybody else on the team. When they play better and they play to a certain standard, they don't really have that in either of those rooms right now. And that's why you're seeing so many of these mistakes happen. I like what you mentioned with KB too, as far as the energy, right? Like I mentioned going out there and everyone's practicing hard. Well, KB is someone who gets people to practice and have fun at practice because he brings a certain energy where like they're dancing before practice and stuff like that. Like that, it sounds silly, but that helps. That helps you go out there and want to have a day instead of it being this hard ass vibe comment about that Elliott Wolf said that everyone kind of gives him crap for now because they're not a good football team. And I get it. Probably wasn't the right thing to say, but that's sort of like, you know, you don't want to go to practice today. We're 3-6 or 3-9, whatever we are at this point. You don't want to go out there and have to, you know, put your body on the line. But Kendrick Bourne is a guy who wants to get them out there. So good attitude. You need someone above him in the room, I think, to really get it going forward. Mm-hmm. All right. I want to keep it on the free agency stuff. And I'm curious your thoughts on this. This is a fun one. Would you trade for DK Metcalf and pay for T. Higgins? Do you think Elliott, speaking of Elliott Wolf, do you think he'd get that crazy and go bring in 2 number ones like that this offseason? And how do they fit together? What do you make of that?
You need to get real creative. Like they have a ton of money.
Yeah.
But those would be 2 big contracts.
Yeah, they would. It would be absurd.
That offensive line, you'd have to get like a couple bargain veterans.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
That's more like no Trey Smith. That's Pat McCarry and that's Morgan Moses are your offensive linemen. And then you're like,
that's crossing fingers on Caden Wallace or something.
And Layden Robinson. Like that's pretty much where you're at there. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. And so hypothetically, if you did, DK Metcalf is the prototypical X,
right?
Where T, I honestly like him more as like he can be an X, but have him more as a Z sometimes. But just move him around the formation. If you give him good matchups and let him do what he does best, he can thrive. DK, we saw it with Christian Gonzalez. Like obviously Christian adjusted and played him way better later when he just tried to mirror him and didn't get physical. If you put your hands on DK Metcalf, you might not get it back. You know what I'm saying? Like he sets the tone. He's a really good blocker. I'm curious what Seahawks followers think of him as a locker room guy where like if DK was the leader in the room, would he be a galvanizing presence or is it just like this guy's super talented? He's just going to lead by example. Like, because sometimes I've seen him on the bench and he looks kind of pouty, but you know, sometimes that doesn't tell the full story. And that's kind of been why I'm like, and also it feels like sometimes he just has some mental lapses. But frankly, T. Higgins does too. And there are times where at the catch point, he's not as dominant as you'd like him to be. Some insane flashes, which is why I tweeted a few weeks ago, like, I think he'd be a number 1 receiver because, like, you see him break bracket coverage. You see him go back for balls that are underthrown over multiple guys. Like, he can do some crazy shit. But at the same time, I just don't know if he's consistent enough to be like the guy that Drake May needs, where it's like, go ball, you're winning on the boundary. Like post, you're taking the top off and you're going up over 2 guys every single time, or at least with more consistency. So yeah, I don't think that's realistic at all.
I'm laughing at the chat is reacting to us even answering this question. They're like, that's not happening. That's never going to happen. Not a chance in hell. And it's true.
We're having fun here.
Exactly.
And also the trade, like what you would get him for. Like if you can spend one of your thirds and maybe like a future second, and then maybe, one of the thirds, and you get back like a 5th or a 6th, something like that, I'm cool with it. But like if you're talking about a 2nd round pick, I really like DK. I don't think you can be giving up 2nd round picks in the place that this team's at right now. I know Andrew De Silva, I was talking to him about, kind of options for the Patriots, because I think a trade is the best case scenario because there's more of those pure, true, proven difference-making wide receiver ones in, I think, guys with contracts that are going to expire in a couple years. But still, you got to find people who are going to want to do that. They pop up, it feels like, every offseason, so we'll see what happens. And if that happens, it'll happen before free agency, so we'll have a pretty idea of where they head before then. But would I like this? Absolutely. That'd be awesome, but I just don't think it's that realistic.
It's never going to happen, first of all. But if you think about it logistic-wise, okay, you bring in DK, you have T, your slots probably still pop, and then you have like Pop and Poke, Baker, Booty, Bourne. Like there's so many, and yes, all those guys right now are like, obviously you would get rid of any of them if you can bring in T. Higgins and DK, but you also just put in, do you waste Polk and Baker? Like you just drafted both of those guys, but Polk's not really been good. So it's wishful thinking. It's not going to happen. Obviously, it would be insane to give Drake those 2 guys where everyone's talking about T. Higgins, and it's like, well, hopefully he can be a 1, and maybe he can be a 1. We're just going to have to bring him in here and wait and see. It's like, oh no, you sign him and then he's a 2 again because he's working with Chase now, and then he's working off of DK this time, and he would be, filthy. You're obviously again.
And it's not that I don't think like T has the number 1 skill set. I just don't think he has the number 1 consistency. That's now where I've come to after I really dove into the tape. It was like Jamar's the number 1 because if you throw it up to him, there's a much higher chance he's going to win than the other guy. With T, I feel that way, just not quite the same if he's going up against the best corner every day. Like if he's going up against Gonzo, I don't feel good about that matchup.
Yeah. All right. I want to stay on this Elliott Wolf thing. And this question had 2 parts. So I couldn't fit it in the thing. But basically what they said was about tanking in the NFL, that it doesn't come from coaches and players. It comes from ownership and management, where like not the best decisions are made, but you're not going to have coaches and players coaching to lose, right? And so the question this person asks is, do you think they tried to tank this year given where they were and just purposely not paid these guys? I know you have an opinion on the offensive line, so I want you to say it again to drill it into their heads about why they didn't spend for guys. But I'm just going to say that, no, I don't think they tanked. I don't think they did any of this on purpose. There's no purposeful reason to not put out the best team there. There's a longer term plan, right? So you're not going to throw all the cash this year and not have any to spend. There's levels to this. And I heard Albert Breer talking about this on NBC Sports, where he was like, the Crafts are kind of resigned to the fact that this isn't a single year rebuild. And so you're not going to push all the chips to the middle, but that doesn't mean you're tanking or you're trying to lose. You're just, you need to build this thing step by step. But I wanted to get your thoughts on that and kind of how their free agency from last year worked and why it hasn't been so successful this year.
And like, not in a condescending way, but that's why like management is management and fans are fans.
Right.
Because fans at some point are going to get sick of the losing and be like, what is going on here? Management feels that way too, but it's okay if we act impulsively like another team in the division that has let go of several people. And I don't know about tank, but it's just like kind of, it's a fire sale. A sale, they're just cutting people, whatever. I do not think management wants to tank. I think everything that Robert Kraft has said publicly is we want to win. Now, obviously that's publicly, and like Bruce said, he's resigned to the fact, but he's resigned to the fact. He's used to winning championships. That don't go away. Just like fans where you're like antsy and people say spoiled, but honestly, you become accustomed to winning when you are the best sports franchise, arguably in the history of the planet, right? Robert Kraft wants to win just as badly, especially, he's getting up there in age. He wants another championship as soon as possible. Elliott Wolf's dad is one of the most well-respected general managers and front office people in the history of this game. he looks up to his dad a lot. He grew up around football and all those things. He grew up around other very respectable people and a very respectable organization like Green Bay. Obviously, Cleveland's different.
Right.
I don't actually even want to get into that. I don't want to get into Cleveland's culture. I don't. But I do not think Elliott Wolf has a single bone in his body that would be okay with tanking. And that's just, I think, any.
And I see this in the chat too. If Elliott feels confident enough to tank in year one, like that's insane. His job's on the line right now. This is his tryout to be. This is his first time GM. Like, he can't just go out there and just be like, no, Robert, we're gonna lose now to win later. That's not gonna happen.
Robert would maybe slap him in his face.
Yeah, right.
Not literally, but like, no, he'd fire him on the spot if he heard that come out of his mouth. Like, oh no, I made a mistake. But in terms of the offensive line. One more time. Actually, let me pull up PFF's list of the free agent class for 2024 so we can get a quick recap of exactly what we were even dealing with. Oh my God.
Me and Taylor have this conversation like 3 times a week.
It's because there weren't good options. There was Tyron Smith, right, who's not playing well. And then you're talking about left tackle specifically. Jonah Williams was the only player on the market where I really thought he could be a difference maker at left tackle. He's playing right tackle for the Cardinals. He was until he got hurt, right? And he was playing that the year before, so maybe that's where he's just most comfortable. Also, he went to a team that actually had a promising future and a quarterback. So that's a much easier sell than a team like the Patriots where no one even knew what they were going to do with their first pick. Internally they did, but free agents didn't know that. And also they completely uprooted everything. It was a brand new team. Those kinds of players, it's been reported, Mayo has acknowledged, and players have even acknowledged, this is not a hot destination. Mm-hmm. Not only that, but given what the options that they had, they made the effort. They brought in Nick Leverett. They brought in Chooks Okorafor. Like Michael Jordan, only Chooks was the one that was expected to actually start. The other guys were supposed to be depth options. Chooks obviously, decides he doesn't want to play football anymore, at least this season, because largely, at least from my conversation with him, he didn't feel comfortable on the left side. I think we know at this point, at some point, he would have ended up going back to the right side and is a starting caliber player, but you put him in a spot where he wasn't comfortable. It exposed his flaws, and then everything just looked a lot worse. And now they're in this spot where guys got hurt. It just exacerbated all the issues they had. Caden gets hurt. Layden is kind of disappointing. City doesn't have the development that you were expecting from him. So I just think the perspective of this offensive line has shifted, understandably, because it's a long season. People are frustrated, and they want solutions. And you look back in hindsight and say, what could we have done better? I have yet to hear a better plan than what Elliott Wolf did from the people who complain about what Elliott Wolf did. Not trying to come at the person who commented, but if you think he could have done better, don't just ask. Give me the plan that you would have liked to see so we can at least have an actual discussion, because this just kind of feels like I'm unhappy and I'm just grasping at straws.
Mark Daniels did that last week talking about the offensive coordinator. Everyone was on, Vid Pelt for having, turning it around a little bit. And then all the Twitter trolls were like, well, they shouldn't even have him. They should have hired somebody else. And Mark was like, tell me who. And nobody had an answer for him.
And we said the same thing. Or when all the candidates were kind of in their spots, I made the list and was like, everywhere these people went, they went somewhere where they knew someone, where it was basically the same system. They were following someone, or they stayed put. No one was trying to see what was going to happen in New England except for Alex Van Pelt, because he knew Elliott Wolf and also probably didn't have a whole lot of other options, if we're being totally honest, because he's an older OC, had no experience as a long-term play caller, all those things. So, if you want this team to do better, you need to actually put in the work sometimes. And I know it's hard, but you got to put in the work and actually be like, could this have been a reality? Right. Or am I just upset and yelling into the abyss?
Good answer. With that answer, we're going to pay the bills one more time before we close this out with a few more questions to hear about our friends at GameTime. It's the best ticketing app. It's the one I use for all of my tickets, whether it's sports, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, whether it is even a concert or something of that nature. GameTime has it all. And if you want to come hang out with me and Taylor, kind of be in the same building at Gillette Stadium this Sunday, you can use GameTime and get into Colts at Patriots in Foxborough for as little as $81 right now. They have the new GameTime Picks feature. It's the best. It filters out the fluff and shows you only the deals on great seats that you can have, and you don't need to waste time with all of the other nonsense. They just pick the game for you. They pick the seats right for you. They have super deals. They have amazing deals. They have awesome deals. I'm looking at it right now. I mentioned you could get them for as little as $81. You can also sit in the lower bowl 100 levels for $131 right now on the GameTime app. So if you want to go do it, download it today. Use code CLNS to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. All you got to do is download it, create an account, and like I said, use that code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it, Taylor?
Game time.
It is game time. It's also time to wrap up the mailbag here. But before we do, actually, Robin Fish, another one. $4.99ers. We appreciate it. I'm going to read it because it was nice. Mike and Taylor are the best in the game with all the positivity. My favorite host by far. We appreciate it. We do try and keep it positive without trying to be too overbearing. Obviously, it's not a great season, but we do try and bring the light to it. So, Rob, thank you so much for the comment and for following along and watching the show. And if you,
it's a rebuild. Also, like if this were the dynasty era and the team was losing. Oh no, I would have a much harder time being positive, right? Because then it's just like then it's a complete lack of self-awareness. Where right. It's if you're talking about a team that's winning Super Bowls every year and then they lose 4 straight, it's like, oh yeah, but like Sony Michel's doing good. It's like, shut up.
Yeah, right.
In a rebuild where we went into the season knowing, like I know I said they had a loose chance to make the playoffs, but I made myself very clear where it's like they need a top 10 running game and they need their defense to show up. Injuries hurt them, obviously. The offensive line didn't turn out the way anybody expected, so that just went away. My caveats were out the window.
Right.
But yeah, like again, it's a rebuild. We want to at least give you guys reasons to be excited. We're not just trying to like pull the wool over your eyes and
right.
just lie to you. And also be patient with the coaching staff while also trying to let you know when we do feel like they are just objectively not doing the right thing to the best of our ability.
We're gonna answer a question like that next. But I want to keep the super chat up because we appreciate Rob so much. And on that, like, if you guys have been watching Patriots Press Pass for, the last 3-4 seasons, when I was hosting Patriots Beat with Barth, and it was the Matt Patricia year, and there was more expectations, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's levels to it, right? Like Mac Jones was coming into year 2 after a successful rookie season. They made a couple moves. Now, obviously, it didn't work out, and during that I would sit here and give the team shit. Like I wasn't just saying, well, no, it's going to be okay, because it wasn't okay. And now if this goes on for another year and another 2 years, then if we're still here together on Patriots Daily, we're going to be losing our minds on here because there's levels to it. Let's just relax and let's give these guys, I've said it all along, they deserve more than one season, which gets me to this question here. When do they make a coaching change? Now, I don't know if it's a troll question where like everyone wants Mayo fired now. We obviously don't believe on this show that Mayo should be fired this season, but kind of looping that into what we were just talking about. At what point, Taylor, in your opinion, does it become too much? At what point, whether it's something happens or the winning isn't there, like how long is Gerard Mayo's leash as the head coach of the Patriots?
I think you need to still show improvement. Like I don't think anybody's necessarily, especially Mayo's going to get fired. But if over the last month of the season, you don't show some level of improvement, like it's not like what we saw before the Dolphins game, where it's okay, they're not winning all the time, but they're in these games. That's the kind of thing you want to see. You don't expect them to beat the Bills, the Chargers, or the Cardinals. We're being very honest. If they go 0-4, I don't think you're saying, oh, these guys are booty. I mean, because they kind of are, but
right.
You at least want to see, they're in the game. Right? They're not beating themselves with penalties and miscommunications and poor fundamentals. They're actually competing. That's what you want to see, because when that happens, you have that energy and the coaches are getting that out of their players. Then when you add more talent, you expect to take a step forward. So I will say the only coaches I could see them firing outside of like position coaches, obviously, if they don't play well enough, but we're talking about coordinators. The only way Van Pelt or Covington get fired is if they lose their players or if they just completely bottom out. Like we're talking, this is impossible to watch. Whereas like even last week, a lot of that, what really looked bad was like Kyle Duggar at times, where it felt like he just did not have his head on straight. It wasn't all him, but things like that where it's like, all right, it's not like the full team, but there's just like guys who really need to tighten it up, and then everything else will look better. So that's how I think that works. I think in terms of next season, that's where especially the coordinators are on the hot seat, where if things don't make sense schematically, if players aren't playing well and they're disappointing expectation while being put in positions where they've usually had success, unlike Jelani Tavai, where he's had to play true middle linebacker as a guy who used to be an or the will linebacker, things like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying if like Christian Barmore is healthy again and for some reason he's just fallen off the face of the earth, that's where I'm saying Covington, like what's going on here. And in terms of Mayo, I think the only way he gets fired before year 3 is if he loses the locker room, which he has not by any stretch of the imagination. Players have made it very clear they enjoy playing for Mayo. They believe in him and what this organization is building. But if next year they have another, they're worse than they were this year, that's where you have to have a very honest conversation and maybe just be like, Mayo, your seat is scalding hot. If it's not better by year 3, we might fire you midseason. Yeah. But I think with coaching, it ultimately comes down to the players still believe in what you're saying. And I think the offense especially loves Van Pelt. They, without being solicited, often will be like, I love his demeanor. I love, what he puts together and all this stuff. Like, they like him. I think they'd actually be upset if you fired him after one season, knowing that the offense had holes. With Covington, I think he's more on the hot seat because it's like, yeah, you had injuries, so a little bit of benefit of the doubt, but you were experimenting with things. They didn't work sometimes. They did work other times, but we need to see that you've grown as a coordinator, especially as a young guy. So that's it. Maintain the buy-in from your players and don't put out a product that is consistently impossible to watch. The Patriots have had some real bad games, but I wouldn't say this entire season they've been impossible to watch. It's just had 2 or 3 where you're like, dog, this is not it. And typically they respond.
Last week offensively was kind of impossible to watch until the fourth quarter.
I'm saying last week was one of those games. That game in Jacksonville, those were I would turn the TV off if I was home. I wouldn't have watched the fourth quarter. Those games, but again, they bounced back from those. They show resilience. We'll see if they can do it after what happened last time. But yeah, those are the big ones. You need players to believe what you're saying, and you need to at least have a watchable product on the field that shows some level of development throughout the season.
Yeah. I think AVP's safe. I think they value what he does with Drake May and the development of him. And he had another honest comment 2 weeks ago, I think it was, when he was like, look, my job is to be here and develop Drake May for the future as a franchise quarterback, and that's what I'm going to do. And I think he knows that. I think they know that. And I think he's been successful at that so far.
And Mayo said that he's calling good plays. He said the players need to execute. I know everybody hates when you say that. And there have been times I said against the Rams, those cover 2 blitzes make no sense. Right. That's the kind of thing where I'm like, don't do that shit. You are actually putting players in terrible positions, impossible positions. That can't happen, but that's not happening with him all the time. It does feel like more of an execution thing. Also, what were we talking about in the car with Darian Lowe and Tyler Guyton?
Their PFF grades, right? Oh, yeah.
Darian Lowe and Tyler Guyton have been pretty similar this season. Obviously, Tyler Guyton has more talent, should grow, but this was a pretty interesting thing where the Patriots reportedly tried to trade up for Tyler Guyton, weren't able to do it, but they've had similar production. Obviously, Darian as a lesser talented veteran and Tyler Guyton as a rookie with more talent, but had a lot to learn at the NFL.
Disappointed in a comment from Robin Fish without any money attached to it.
No, because he's actually going to send.
I'm kidding. Okay. We appreciate it, Rob. Don't do it. You've donated enough to the show. We appreciate it. I just had to make that joke there. But no, long story short, AVP safe. Mayo, if year 2 is the same as this year, I think they'll have a real conversation about moving on. That's just it moves faster. Head coaching moves faster now than it ever did. And yeah, Kraft sort of had him handpicked for a long time, but I think if you see no change, in the win column, if they go 4-13, that's 8-26 over 2 years. Quick math there. You like that? Yeah, that can't happen. So again, we'll see what happens. I think they'll improve. They're sort of, Mayo said it's not, success isn't linear. It's going to go up and down, and we've seen that all season. Hopefully it continues to move. And I'll answer Covington with this question from After Huddle. Coaching wise, how can we help DC be a better DC? Last year we had both Steve, Bill, and Covington working with the defense. Now we had this conversation. Now 2 or 3 are gone, and Mayo's learned to be a head coach, where there's the offense brought in a young staff, but they have Ben McAdoo behind the scenes as the advisor. I'm not exactly sure of his role, but someone with experience. The defense doesn't have that. And Bill's gone and Steve's gone. And Gerard is really being this head coach CEO person. And Covington goes from defensive line, which is kind of considered a specialist role to defensive coordinator. So he has a lot on his plate right now. And that's kind of the reason why I think they're struggling. So I don't know, to answer the previous question and then ask you this question, I don't know if they'll fire Covington after this season, but I do think there will be changes on the defensive side one way or another. And whether that is Gerard Mayo taking over play calling duties, whether that's Gerard Mayo having, a lot more of a grasp of that entire side of the football, or if it's bringing in somebody of that Ben McAdoo level of competence where they've called a defense before, they've been around the league and can sort of hold everything together while letting the young guys sort of call it and run it the way they are.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of their decision not to bring in an older guy was that they had a veteran defense.
Yeah.
Like at all three levels, you have guys who played a lot of football in the system and, they want the players to take accountability. So maybe it was like, what, the players are going to do what they got to do. We just got to make sure we put them in position to succeed, right, which is a lot harder when you're missing like one of your best players at every level of the defense. That just, you want to say, oh, they're making excuses, but the reality is playmakers are playmakers for a reason. They are not easy to replace. It usually takes a committee, and that committee is going to give you a lesser impact, obviously. That's just speculation. Yeah. I think it was either Alex or Brian who mentioned Steve Wilkes as an option. I would really like that if DeMarcus Covington, and it depends on how Gerard Mayo feels about him, because he clearly has no issue with it. I still would like some type of advisor above DeMarcus Covington, if anything, just to take something off his plate, right? So he doesn't have to do absolutely everything. Like the offensive line coaches, they have 3. And we see in the little bits of practice we get to watch, we see how valuable that is, where sometimes like Mike McCarthy's off talking to one guy, then you've got Paul Kugler is like setting things up and like making sure guys' technique is right. And Scott Peters sometimes is like watching, so he has a big picture view and can kind of pick out things on his own. Like those things are super helpful to have. Ben McAdoo takes on certain assignments where he's taking on like the third down stuff. And that happens on every coaching staff where you divvy up responsibilities. But having a guy with head coaching experience, I think would be absolutely huge. So, yeah, I would love to see them bring in somebody in that kind of advisory role just to help Covington out. I think he's gotten more flack than he deserves, and he's been put in a tough position, both because of the hiring and how his job has had to go and with the injuries. But, there's nothing wrong with getting more help in the NFL, especially as a coach. More hands are good as long as it's not too many chefs in the kitchen. If they could find someone who they thought fit their scheme well and, their culture and all those things, I'd be absolutely for it. I don't really see any downside there.
Yep, I totally am with you. Wow, we're already coming up on an hour. This is a good show. It's flowing pretty well here. We'll finish this off with 2 more quick ones. Taylor, I know this was your favorite question that we got. How do we trade for a new fan base? I'd like one that doesn't lack critical thinking and actually wants to solve problems instead of just bitching, moaning, and saying, fire everyone. The floor is yours.
I didn't think you were actually going to put this in. I didn't think you were going to put this in. I always want to be respectful to the fans. Like we were fans, our job wouldn't be what it is without fans. And I always value your guys' opinion. It's the only reason I stay on Twitter. I swear. Like we talked about this today. I engage on Twitter too much, but a lot of it's because you guys help me in the way I cover the game, where sometimes you introduce a perspective I didn't have, and it forces me to go down a rabbit hole and learn more. And I love that. And I really appreciate that. And it's one of my favorite parts of this job. So I'm not turning this into an attack on the fans, because the vast majority of you are fantastic. You just want your football team to be entertaining on Sundays when you spend all this time and money and energy invested in them. I completely get that. My only request, and I'm not even going to address the crazies. Like I'm not going to talk about the people who like will screenshot things just to bring them up like half a year later. Like those people are insane. You all need help. Please touch some grass. Like really, I understand you're upset about the team not doing well, but like, go to therapy. That's what I have to say about the really the maniacal fans.
Sure.
Other than them, I just say to the fans, try. I know it's hard, and I'm being so sincere. Just try to practice patience. That's why I come to this show. We'll try to give you some different perspective to kind of take the weight off your chest a little bit, because I know, like, we go to these games. It's hard. Like, you see in the post-game show, you see our energy. Sometimes I'll try to find a silver lining because that's just kind of how I am. But I'm usually a lot more upset post-game than I am when we review the game and I've had time to settle down and just be like, all right, we're in a rebuild. A few things went wrong. They can be better, even as bad as it was in Miami, where it truly, in a lot of ways, was kind of a dumpster fire. So Patriots fans, for the vast majority of you, are awesome. We appreciate the hell out of you, even the ones that aren't watching this show.
Right.
Like when the fans come out and they're excited, like it's a great environment at Gillette. And I really want to be very clear. I have a lot of love for the fans. Just y'all crazy MFers, like, please find something to do or just leave us alone. Like, find someone else who you like better to cover the team, because that stuff is bad for my mental health.
I'll add to that. In not answering the crazies, I'm not going to do that. But to the people that do continue to just say, like, fire Mayo, fire Wolf, this is awful, I just want to win. If I was not covering the team and did not have to for my job think critically about the team, I would probably be saying the same things.
Yeah.
Because that's what you want. You want it to be just like it was. You know, this isn't working, try something new. And that's all I'm thinking about, because I'm either trying to watch the game on Sunday, and then once they start to stink it up, I turn it off and say, I don't want to watch this until this team's good anymore. So, like, I get where that's coming from. That's why we try and bring not necessarily the positive angle to this, but, like, let's talk it through and let's see what's wrong and what has to change and what doesn't have to change and why you should relax on the fire Mayo opinion for right now and give it some time. So,
and like in the fire Mayo stuff, like, again, like you said, I get it. It's just, it's more nuanced than that. And again, that's why, like, come to social media, and if you want to know, like, a post or something, if you engage us civilly and you're just like, hey, you know, I just can't get it with this Mayo guy. Like, should we fire him? Those comments are awesome. I love those where you're actually trying to start a conversation. But when it's just, like, constantly undermining what we say, or it's, like, not even a back and forth, it's more just like, no, but this is wrong and that was wrong. Like, no one wants to talk to anyone who does that. Like, think in your real life. Do you really want to talk to someone who only comes back at you with negativity and there's no, like, okay, fair point. Like, there's no discourse. Like, that's the stuff that I can't stand. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm sorry I cut you off. I just, I feel very passionate about this because I'm the one who engages too much. I need to be better. But I love the fans who are on there and who are awesome and really want to ask questions and have conversations. Yep.
I like this comment in the chat. I'll only actually be mad if they put a dome over Gillette. I agree. Keep it. That snow game last Thursday was unbelievable between the Bengals and the Browns. Oh,
wait. Does somebody want to see my cat?
Someone said, where? Show us your cats, or I'm going to send a lot of money. All right, go get the cat, because now we're having fun here.
We have a cat coming.
Awesome.
It's the baby.
Love it. So maybe they'll send some cash in the super chat. We're not soliciting money on this show. I don't even know if that's
not soliciting money. You don't need money. This is my baby. Her name is Harley because when she gets excited, she purrs, and it sounds like a motorcycle.
Oh, hi, Harley. Well, what does Harley think of Drake May's outlook?
What do you think of Drake May? She's crazy about him. She got so excited, she had to just do a lap. Drake May's outlook, from my perspective, not just Harley's, turnovers got to stop. Mm-hmm. We know that. The strip sack last week was very much an anomaly in terms of, like, him putting the ball out like that and trying to stiff arm a guy. Like, that was nuts. Can't do that. He's still on the upward trajectory. Mm-hmm. Like Alex McPelt said, he is an anomaly for a young quarterback to play the way he does, where you see the consistent growth. You see the way he can read defenses. There's hiccups here and there, but he is a rookie. We all know that. Drake May's outlook, honestly, he could be as good as he wants to be. He could be a top 5 quarterback if he wants to be. He could be a top 3 quarterback if he wants to be, because he's got the work ethic. He's got the talent. Obviously, the organization needs to take care of him. That's ultimately going to decide just how high his ceiling is. But my outlook is I'm very excited, and everybody else should be, because he is a dynamic player. He's got the kind of mentality you want for a quarterback, where he's got the leadership, where we were hearing, oh my God, thank you. Oh my God. You should get it. We need play dates.
I do. I need a dog. I'm a dog person. Not allowed to have dogs in my new apartment, though. It's too bad. I know.
You just got to be quiet about it, like I was.
Yeah, exactly. I know. There's no dog in here. You have to put I'll have to put socks on its paws so it doesn't scratch the floors. Yeah. Well, that was an extremely generous super chat.
Thank you. Seriously, that was really sweet.
The color of the super chat changed because it was so much money. They're usually green, but yellow is extraordinary. So thank you, Articular Pack 6. We appreciate it. So I agree on Drake May, that I'm not even going to put the outlook up because I think that he deserves to be on here for the end of the show. So we appreciate that. But I'm with you. That's what we're going to end it on, is that Drake May, There may not be a lot to be excited about this season, and we get that. But Drake May seems to be the guy that they can continue moving forward and build this thing around. And that is the exciting part of being around and covering the Patriots right now. So Patriots heading to nowhere, playing at Gillette this weekend. Sorry, I'm trying to produce and finish this thing out at the same time. Patriots welcoming the Colts to Foxborough on Sunday. Me and Taylor will be back on Friday for a true opponent preview of Patriots versus Colts. I will be off tomorrow. Happy Thanksgiving. We're very thankful for everybody who watches this show, who interacts with the show. We have a ton of fun with the normal fans out there. What are you doing?
This is what the kids do for a heart now.
Why?
I don't, because it looks.
It's like a heart, like the.
Yeah. I think it's a K-pop thing, to be honest. I'm not
interesting.
Sure.
Okay. Well,
I just said that's what the kids do. Oh God, what the? Oh, that's so weird. I'm old.
This mustard thing with Kendrick Lamar. You know about this? I had to tweet yesterday. What is mustard? I had no idea. And Xanis was the one who was in my comments telling me what it was. And he was like, okay, boomer. And I was like, really, dude? But yeah, I'm getting old.
I said that I was 28 out loud for the first time last week, and I almost collapsed.
That's so funny. Oh, man. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us here on Patriots Daily Mailbag Edition. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll be back Friday. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Pat's taking on the Colts on Sunday. We will be there. So rate, review, subscribe to Patriots Press Pass. We'll have you covered all weekend long as the Pats continue on the 2024 season. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we will talk to you soon. Happy Thanksgiving. See ya.
Happy Thanksgiving.